That's alpinehomemedical.com.
Okay, that's good. Whoa, Dave!
Sorry, I'll go grab some paper towels.
You can't let Dave pour things. He works at JCW's. They fill stuff up past the brim over there, like their milkshakes. They're thick, rich, and oh my gosh.
Delicious?
Oh no. Dave's filling up Crystal's car for her.
Dave, stop!
Hey, this is Clark, JCW. Stop into any of our 5 locations today. We're located in American Fork, Thanksgiving Point, Provo, South Jordan, and our new location in Harriman. Come in and see why at JCW's we believe in quality and a lot of it.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
A remainder of an accident northbound I-15 90th south over to the right shoulder. What little bit of backup it was causing is already cleared out, and no delays or other problems on the rest of your Valley freeways. Transform your outdated kitchen with half-priced granite. Granite, quartz, marble, and quartzite starting at $25 per square foot installed. Visit halfpricegranite.com. Affordable luxury. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, cloudy with mild temperatures and a chance of showers Tuesday and Thursday. Today's high 48, 45 tomorrow. Lows will stay above freezing. And right now we're at 46 degrees and cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com for Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Of course, the big headlines over the weekend. Ron DeSantis suspending his presidential campaign on the Republican side. And, of course, headline tomorrow is that the voters in New Hampshire will go to the polls to make their selection. The question when it comes to the frontrunner, former President Donald Trump, is it inevitable? Is resistance futile? Or are you saying there's a chance? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, the question beyond the headline, which, of course, the elites in the party want to have everyone buy into, and that is that this is over. The coronation can begin, that it is done, that the former president will be the nominee once again on the Republican side. And with the string of endorsements that came from Tim Scott, former candidate, Ron DeSantis, former candidate, is to really create this sense of inevitability, that resistance is futile. But that's not how our election system works. And so whether you are a big former president fan, whether you'd like to see Nikki Haley as the alternative, there's a process that has to play out, and that's the important thing for all of us to step back and take a real good think again moment with. Now, let's start with the former former candidate and governor of the state of Florida, Ron DeSantis. Here was his announcement yesterday that he had officially suspended his presidential campaign.
Now, following our second place finish in Iowa, we've prayed and deliberated on the way forward. If there was anything I could do to produce a favorable outcome, I would do it. But I can't ask our supporters to volunteer their time and donate their resources if we don't have a clear path to victory. Accordingly, I am today suspending my campaign.
Very important to note, a suspension of a campaign is different from an ending of campaign. And that's important because a suspension of campaigns means you get to hold on to the delegates that you have. So Ron DeSantis has 8 delegates coming out of Iowa. So if things were contested at the Republican convention in July, he could play a role with those delegates. That's why you don't end a campaign, you just suspend it. And then if anything happens with the front runner or someone else, you can always re-engage. So very important message, subtle text underneath the headline is that he didn't end his presidential campaign. He just suspended it. He has delegates. If things got crazy, things got really close at convention, there would be a role to be had there. It was interesting as that played out yesterday, following the announcement from Ron DeSantis. CNN's Dana Bash was actually at an event with Nikki Haley, and Nikki Haley said, sure, I'll go on live TV and give my response to what had just happened with the bowing out of Ron DeSantis. A risky political move to just go that cold turkey straight on the screen with a reaction. Here's the way she framed it.
I think that Ron ran a good race. I know it's personal to get into a race. It's personal to get out of a race. He's been a good governor, and he added a lot to the campaign, and we wish him well.
Nikki Haley gave her framing of the election results in Iowa and her commitment to moving forward to beat both Donald Trump and President Biden.
56,000 people voted in Iowa. Less than 2% voted in one state. We're not going to let that decide what happens in the country. We've got New Hampshire, we've got South Carolina, we've got Super Tuesday. We're going to keep on going, and we're going to fight, and we're going to win. I'm going to finish this so Joe Biden and Donald Trump are not an issue at all, that we actually put them in the past and we go forward, because our country deserves it, and Americans want it. They're tired.
So that was Nikki Haley, and as she continues to sharpen her focus and framing of what's going on in the race, I think you are going to see a strategy. She's been starting to lump together the current president and the former president. She did it in the context of their age. She did it in the context of them being divisive, in the context of them both having a certain amount of chaos going around them and around their orbits, though very different in terms of style and substance. I think what you're going to see over the coming days is Nikki Haley getting laser focused in terms of linking the current and the former president together on failed policies. So you will hear things like the out-of-control Washington spending under the Trump and Biden era needs to end. She'll link them together because, remember, Nikki Haley is going after those more moderate Republicans and independents, center-left Democrats. That's who she's really trying to pull into this conversation. She'll talk about the failed immigration and border policies of the Trump-Biden era. And that she would do things differently. And so trying to frame it in the context of specific policies and linking both Biden and Trump together is an interesting strategy. It's one that I think you should keep your eye on in the coming days. I think we're going to hear a lot of that as this continues to roll forward. Now, as it relates to what's taking place in New Hampshire, the vote tomorrow, remember that independents and even Democrats can vote in the Republican primary. The only rule in New Hampshire is you can only play in one primary. So the Democrats do have a primary vote tomorrow as well, although a very muted one because President Joe Biden is not on the ballot in New Hampshire. And so it's a very minority candidate kind of positioning there in New Hampshire for the Democrats. So a lot of Democrats would just stay home. Some of them may say, we want to make this interesting so they can register as Republicans. They can show up. They can vote. And independents as well will do that, affiliate for the day and cast a vote. And so the interesting thing is, will there be enough? And there actually is enough. If you do the math, if you look past just the headlines of all of this, there is enough underneath there. There are enough independents and center-right Democrats in the state of New Hampshire. They could make a difference in how things play out tomorrow. Now, the latest polls are still showing the former president with a comfortable lead around double digits, around 10%. But again, a lot of those don't factor in as many of those independent votes as could show up. The question will be the motivation. Are the Donald Trump voters more motivated and more likely to show up tomorrow and cast a ballot? Are the independents and the Nikki Haley voters, are they now emboldened and have some confidence that they're going to go out and make sure their neighbors and friends get out as well? So it will be a very interesting perspective tomorrow. The other thing I would have everybody just exhale on for a moment is we are in such a rush in this country for instant certainty, snap judgments, hot takes, even when it comes to presidential politics. And we should all remember that out of the 1,215 delegates that someone needs to become the nominee for the Republican Party, only 32 of those have been passed out so far. The former president has 22, I believe. Nikki Haley has 7. Ron DeSantis has a handful. Even Vivek Ramaswamy, I think, got 3. But that's it. Out of the 1,215, that's a long way out. Now, most people are saying, look, the odds for President Trump are so big, so strong. And clearly, he's the front runner. Clearly, he's a commanding lead, no question. But just like in an athletic contest, it's why you play the game. On paper, it should be done. But remember, politics is all about momentum, perception, and can you get to next? And so I think if you're looking at the Nikki Haley side of the coin on this one, she's actually looking at a strong finish in New Hampshire. And once she gets to that, if she can get a good finish in New Hampshire, then she can make the case to move on to South Carolina. And the big test, I think, is the longer that Nikki Haley stays in the race, the more difficult and complicated it becomes for the former president, especially in the face of some of the legal challenges that he's going to be facing in the months ahead. So does Nikki Haley have the resources and the support to continue on to Super Tuesday? That's the real question beyond it. Not just New Hampshire, not just North and South Carolina, but can you get all the way to Super Tuesday? Do you have that kind of staying power? And can you present a positive vision that you can get those independent and center voters to actually come along for the ride? We're going to continue this. We'll also do a little breakdown coming up at 1:50 on what went wrong in DeSantis land that caused such an epic crash after such big promise when they began. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Every single show on KSL News Radio is part of the KSL app, so you can listen when you want. News with Tim and Amanda when you get up, hit live on the app. Dave and Dejanovic at 9 and Boyd Matheson at 1, they're on the app. Plus, you can podcast them for work. And Jeff Kaplan, yeah, he's there on the app. The movie show, KSL Greenhouse, latest traffic report, they're all on the app for KSL News Radio. KSL News Radio.
Tired of living in your parents' basement or renting? You want to buy a home, but you were told that your debt-to-income ratio is too high. This is why you need a highly qualified mortgage lender. Rick at Loans by Rick has 22 years of experience and has helped hundreds of clients lower their debt-to-income so they can make the most important purchase of their lives and buy a home. As with any profession, there are different levels of mortgage lenders, so why not work with the best lender? One that can cut through the mortgage jungle and get you into a home. As interest rates come down, home values will go up, creating multiple offers which will raise home values higher. Don't wait to buy a home. Buy now. You can always refinance later and save hundreds of dollars. Let Loans by Rick guide you with your mortgage process. Call 801-809-SAVE or click loansbyrick.com. That's loansbyrick.com.
Rick Kirschenbaum, NMLS 241179, and Vintage Lending, NMLS 287106 are equal housing lenders. Some restrictions apply.
The monster is coming, and it wants you and your family.
And that's great news, really, because it's time for the Bear Lake Monster Winterfest, January 26th through the 28th. Winterfest is all about an incredible celebration of winter and all the fun it brings. So start Friday with Monster Winter Sports and Trails Day, a free event featuring fat tire bikes, snowshoes, snowmobiles, and tubes for the kids. Also a taste of Bear Lake, with local restaurants dishing up their tasty specialties. Then Saturday, it's the Monster 5K Walk and Run, a Monster Cisco Disco Tournament, chili cook-off, even a cardboard boat regatta, followed by the famous Monster Plunge. Come on, Bear Lake awaits. Visit BearLakeMonsterWinterfest.com for pre-registration times and locations. That's BearLakeMonsterWinterfest.com. Presented by Bear Lake Visitors Bureau and Bear Lake Chamber.
When words come out of our mouths and everything sounds fine, no one bats an eye. But if things come out a little jumbled or letters sound different than most, there's speech therapy. But did you know that speech therapy is used for more than just stuttering or disfluency? From articulation to expressive and receptive language to a simple act of swallowing that most of us take for granted, speech therapy can do amazing things for you, your health, and of course your sense of self. That's why Summit Speech Therapy is here. Summit Speech Therapy works with people of all ages, from infants and toddlers who have a difficult time feeding or eating, TBI, stroke, or coma patients, to children and adults with speech problems. So much of it is all related, and Summit Speech Therapy can help. Summit works with all insurance companies as well as private pay options, and the experience can be life-changing. With clinics up and down the Wasatch Front, including Murray, with no long waiting for an appointment. For more, visit SummitSLP.com. That's SummitSLP.com.
Made to Shine. Love stories from Shane Company customers.
We've only been dating 6 months, but I really wanted to get my girlfriend something special for Valentine's Day. So I went to Shane Company, and they thought a gift with their birthstone would be meaningful. So I got her an opal necklace. And their opals are spectacular. I was surprised it was only a couple $100. I can't wait to give it to her.
We're passionate about sourcing the most beautiful gemstones from around the world, so your love can shine bright. Shane Company. Fine jewelry since 1929.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, David Yoakum, who both prosecuted and defended high-profile criminal cases in Utah, has passed away. Second, fines for speeding in school zones could be going up, way up, under a legislative proposal. And third, In-N-Out Burger says crime in Oakland means they have to close their location in that city. Right now, 46 degrees and cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always. The Biden administration has announced another plan to tackle American student debt. The plan, aptly named the SAVE Plan, wants to provide immediate relief to anyone with loans under $12,000 as long as they've stayed up to date with their payments. Now, we want to dig into what's behind all of that, how it actually works, what it looks like. And to do that, of course, we return to Emma Camp, assistant editor at Reason. Had a great piece at Reason.com today. And Emma, welcome back to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So let's get, for our listeners, just give us a little update. This came not by executive order. The president has tried that route without success. So he's been going through the agencies, through the, in this case, the Education Department. Give us a sense of what's been announced and what that looks like.
Right. So probably the best way of explaining this is to go back to 2022 when the Biden administration announced that first attempt at forgiving up to 20,000 student loans for borrower in this blanket one-time federal student loan forgiveness. So while that plan was struck down at the Supreme Court last year, what wasn't challenged are a bunch of these changes to how the government does federal student loans that were announced as part of this original plan. So one of those was the SAVE plan. So what the SAVE plan is it's an income-driven repayment plan. So income-driven repayment is usually targeted at lower-income borrowers. And what it does is it pegs your monthly payment to a certain percentage of your income. But what makes the SAVE plan different is when you compare it to the most popular other repayment plan, it's significantly more generous. So you mentioned earlier about this immediate forgiveness thing that's about to happen. So the SAVE plan, what it does is if you have a balance of less than $12,000, if you have been enrolled in the plan for 10 years and making payments, you get immediate forgiveness. But to contrast that with the most popular earlier plan, the repay plan, you have to pay for 20 years. And there are a bunch of other changes to the SAVE plan to make it different from the previous plans that mean that for most borrowers, they're going to be paying basically a fraction of the loans that they actually took out.
Okay, and then in terms of the ever-present, how are we going to pay for that syndrome? What's the estimated cost on this? What does that look like? And is this one that's going to, because it's within the agency, does that make it pretty safe in terms of court challenges?
So based off of some estimates, the SAVE plan could cost taxpayers up to $475 billion, so almost $500 billion over the next decade. And what's important to kind of put that in scale is that this the original one-time student loan forgiveness plan was estimated to only cost about $500 billion. So over one decade, it costs about as much as one-time student loan forgiveness, which is really staggering. And yeah, you're right, because it is in the agencies, it's not really easy to attack legally. I think some people have tried, but it hasn't worked out. And so really the only way that something like this could get changed is if a different president gets elected who doesn't like this plan and has his education secretary try to reverse it.
And then in terms of execution, we know there's been a number of challenges on a host of these different programs rolling out. Is this something that the department is adequately set up for? Can they execute it? Or is this another one that's going to get mired in a lot of the bureaucracy and maybe lead to some frustrated people who think they're getting loan forgiveness, but maybe it's not coming quite so fast?
I mean, I don't think I have any particular reason to think that this will go any better or worse than any other, federal student loan scheme. basically. I think that we're probably going to see, over $1 billion of immediate student loan forgiveness within the next month or so when the SAFE plan goes into effect. And the government is really trying to get people enrolled in this plan because it is so generous.
And then in terms of things you're watching as this rolls out, is this something that the president clearly can position this as both a win in terms of an agency, in terms of the American people? Obviously, this can also play on the campaign trail as well.
Right. Something that I've really tried to hammer in my writing at Reason is that I think a lot of people, once they saw this really big, flashy, one-time student loan forgiveness get struck down in Supreme Court, there's a little sense of like, cool, like we can go home now, we can party, like we got what we want. We're not going to have this massive, incredibly expensive student loan scheme going out that's going to help, mostly people who've gone to college, right? But it's like, no, with this SAFE plan, with other changes, we're still going to be paying, taxpayers are going to be paying way more going towards federal student loan forgiveness than they would have if the Biden administration had made no changes at all. There's still really a lot of issues when it comes to how we do federal student loan forgiveness that incentivizes students to make unwise financial educational decisions and incentivizes colleges to raise prices, particularly for graduate degrees.
Yeah, I think that's where we get into the real trouble is if it's all there, then those the fees, the tuition continues to skyrocket at those institutions. You do end up with students making poor choices, thinking, well, it'll get forgiven in the end, so I don't have to really worry about it. And all of this in the context of how the agencies function and operate. I just keep reading back over your piece, Emma, and keep thinking this is going to cost more than the one we had all the big hoopla about last year, that this will actually be more expensive for the American taxpayer.
Right. And I think that's something that, it isn't as flashy as student loan forgiveness because there's a lot of sort of activist momentum behind forgiving student loans outright. But, when your monthly payments are so low, that also ends up being really expensive and really important. I've talked to experts in federal student loans. I've read things from experts in federal student loans. And in many ways, a lot of people are saying that this is basically the same as just giving people grants, right? If you're paying so little of what you actually took out, the federal government might as well have just given you the money for free.
Yeah, that's interesting how that moves all the way around. Anything else that's just kind of under the radar that you're watching as this rolls forward?
So when it comes to federal student loans, I think something that's really important for people to keep in mind is that we do have a federal student loan crisis, but it's not for who you think. It isn't really about undergraduate degrees. It's for graduate degrees. And the reason why is that the federal government very wisely has a pretty modest cap on the amount of federal student loans you can take out for an undergraduate degree. Now, granted, parents still take out loans, kids still get private student loans, but for federal student loans, that cap has stayed the same for a while, and it incentivizes colleges to not spike the real cost of attendance too much. So tuition might increase, but schools will often increase scholarships. So kids aren't paying that much more. But the difference is that with graduate programs, there's no such cap. And so you're seeing people take out, 6 figures of federal student loans to get graduate degrees that often aren't worth it, things like social work degrees. And so I think there needs to be a lot more attention put on how graduate degrees, how this upper level of education has been particularly sort of put out of whack by how the federal government does student loans.
Fascinating stuff. Great writing, great research as always. Emma Camp from Reason, a great piece at reason.com. Check that out. And then also stick around. Coming up at 2 o'clock, we're going to have Scott Rasmussen join us from RMG Research talking about the education elite in the country, their outsized voice and influence. It's a really unbelievable conversation in terms of the disconnect from the rest of the country. So we'll dive into that as well. Emma, thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to having you back soon.
All right. Thanks for having me.
All right. Some great perspective there from Emma Camp from Reason. And again, this is one of those where if the president does it by executive order, as he tried to do in wiping out student loan, there was a big drama. There was court cases, went to the Supreme Court, got struck down. Now, when you do things underneath the auspice of the agencies, it's much less noticeable to the American people, but the impact can be every bit as severe, every bit as impactful in terms of what the American people are actually spending. We'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next. Stick around.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top local story this hour. The 2024 legislative session only in its second week, but some controversial bills have already made their way from the Utah House to the Senate. Senate President Stuart Adams says as early as this afternoon, 2 committees will take up a bill that affects diversity programs in government institutions, as well as one that impacts gender-specific bathrooms in government buildings.
We'll get public input, and that's really important to have. So I'm sure the committees will be long and open to those that want to speak.
Adams says if the committee signs off, both bills could head to the Senate floor by the middle of the week. Former Salt Lake County District Attorney David Yoakum has passed away. He was first elected DA in 1986, served 4 terms total. He was known as the first prosecutor to convict Ted Bundy in 1976 for aggravated kidnapping, and also prosecuted notorious criminals like Mark Hoffman. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The nation's largest 4-year public university system will be operating on limited staff this week as workers walk off the job. ABC's Alex Stone reports.
Over 29,000 faculty members at California State University campuses have the goal of shutting down the campuses this week. For 5 days, professors, counselors, coaches, librarians, and others are hitting the picket lines. They want more money and other benefits for working at the 23 CSU campuses up and down California. The Cal State system says campuses are open this week, but the striking workers say it will not be business as usual without them there. Alex Stone, ABC News, Los Angeles.
Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up 143 points on the day. The NASDAQ is up 69. And a KSL weather. What you see outside with the clouds is pretty much what you get, with maybe a little rain now and then. That's next. KSL News Time 131.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Get deals on what you need during MVP's bonus days at Lowe's. Right now, save $20 on select 5-gallon ceiling paint or primer by HGTV Home by Sherwin-Williams. Plus, get 15% off and earn 3 times bonus points when you buy 4 or more Purdy products. Because Lowe's knows savings, Lowe's knows pros. Selection varies by location while supplies last. Discount taken at time of purchase. See sales associate for details. Bonus points calculated before taxes and fees after applicable discounts if any. Valid 1/15 through 1/26. Subject to change.
If you're looking for a new couch, you could cut down on expenses by bundling your car and renter's insurance with Progressive. Because you know you've had this couch for too long. Sure, you've had good times together, but a ripped-up cushion is not a fond memory. It's a sign. Notice how other people have couches with 2 armrests? Now that's living, right? No, it's just normal. So bundle your renters and car insurance with Progressive and put the savings toward a new couch. Please, it's time. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliates and third-party insurers. Not available in all states.
This is Congressman John Curtis. I'm sure you've heard that I'm running for the U.S. Senate, and I'd like to invite you to my campaign kickoff this Monday, January 22nd at 6 p.m. in Orem. You can find the address at johncurtis.org. Join me to celebrate our early momentum across the state. We're strong and we're optimistic. I hope you'll come say hi on Monday evening, share the excitement, and be part of this journey. We'll have J-Dogs, Twisted Sugar Cookies, and great company. Please RSVP at johncurtis.org to let me know you're coming. This Monday, January 22nd at 6 p.m. in Orem. You can find the address at johncurtis.org. I look forward to serving you in the U.S. Senate. As your senator, I'll keep getting things done for Utah. Please RSVP at johncurtis.org to let me know you're coming. See you Monday.
Paid for by John Curtis for Utah.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Scanners calling out an accident in Riverton, Redwood Road, 126 South. Also a crash for Davis County drivers eastbound Center Street at 700 West. The UACPA supports certified professional accountants in Utah through ongoing professional education and leadership development to help them succeed in an ever-changing financial world. Find a CPA that's right for you at uacpa.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, cloudy with mild temperatures, chance of showers Tuesday and Thursday. Today's high 48, 45 tomorrow. Our lows stay above freezing. And right now we're at 46 degrees and mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
The epidemic of loneliness continues to sweep across the country. Our young people are continuing to be hit hard with not just loneliness and depression, discouragement, suicidality. As seasonal affective disorder, SAD, hits its peak, community leaders are stepping in to give Utah's youth the tools they need to make it through. There's been organizations and events that have put things together like Promise to Live, Safe to Feel, that are taking suicide prevention straight to our state's schools and businesses and to individuals and right into our communities. And someone who's been in the middle of those conversations, Gainalyn Condi, of course, one of our favorites to really get into this crucial conversation. And Gainalyn, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Boyd. It's good to be here.
So you were part of the Safe to Feel event down at Utah Valley University. Give us a little sense of who gathered.
It was wonderful. Christy Holt from the Mecca Project and Curtis Morley of Counterfeit Emotions were kind of the spearhead creators of this event last year in southern Utah, and they decided to bring it up north. And this was the first time I was able to work with them, and excited to have the opportunity to say the conference was great because we gathered at Utah Valley University, and I was just talking to Christy this morning, kind of that debrief conversation, post-event debrief. And what I loved, I've done thousands and thousands of events all over the world for various demographics, but this definitely felt like a community-based event. And I think because it was hosted at a university, it became a really welcoming and neutral ground. It was free for anyone that was counted as a student, so that could be at a various age level. We had teenagers all the way up through college, and we had grandparents and parents there too. And so as a speaker and as an educator, I really love when the group that I'm speaking to is kind of diverse in walks of life because it enriches the conversation. And really the goal for this event was to have presenters talk about various levels of mental health and giving language around our feelings. And I just was really grateful to be a part of it.
I always love it when we do get that community-centered solutions. It always has a better conversation. Rather than one group talking about it or another group talking to it, you get that community feel to it, and the conversation is just different. You get all those perspectives in there. Give us a sense of some of the takeaways in terms of, I know, emotional intelligence, as you said, getting words, helping people find those words to have those conversations was a big part of it.
Yes, one of the beautiful parts of this event is it started everyone together. Then there was a break for lunch, and then the workshop portion, and then everyone gathered back. And some of the takeaways that were shared at the end of the day were literally a dad shared that at the event he felt like he was there for him and for his tween daughter, that another father that had just lost his brother 90 days ago to suicide said that he had learned that grief and loss can lead to transformation, and that he was in the middle of that. And in my workshop specifically, the title of my workshop was We Will Never Be Better Without You. 10 years ago, we lost my sister Meg at the age of 40 to suicide. And so we talked a lot about something that I've shared on this show many times, the stewardship of our mental health and the stewardship of sometimes the loss that we each experience. And I talked about the fact that all of us are experiencing different stewardships that either can wound us or make us wise. And when we gather in an event like we did on Saturday, I'm always amazed at the stories that come into the room, right? Everyone has something that they're bringing that is heavy on their hearts. And if we can just assume that about each other as fellow travelers through life, that everyone you encounter has a story and they have something that they're carrying that's heavy on their heart. It may not be as obvious on the outset because maybe their profile or their bio looks like they're checking all the fun boxes, but we all have stewardships that are painful and sometimes very deeply wounding. And 10 years after losing Meg, I'm so grateful to see so many voices in this space, including the Cook Center for Human Connection. They were part of the event, and many others. Gray Space, Doug Richens was there, and Bronson Kafusi. It was just a cool gathering of a lot of voices and thought leaders that are trying to have this conversation on various levels.
I love that. And I love this whole idea of going beyond wounded to becoming wise. And as we really look at each other in a different way, we can find those opportunities to lift each other, to reach out, and also create space for those that are struggling to reach out and to do so with confidence. I think one of the real challenges of those suffering through this kind of crisis, whether it's just a mental health crisis, whether it's a loneliness or depression or whatever it may be across that spectrum, we often either get in this hunker down mode of kind of a defensive crouch, or we're so off balance and so uncertain that we don't even ask. So share with us a little bit, Gaynalyn, maybe some of the tools, some of the ideas that can either help that person who is in crisis or who is struggling get out of the defensive crouch and reach out, or for those of us who are witnessing that we have the tools that we can reach out and lift up.
Well, I love that question. It's an important one. And one of the things I shared in my workshop was that none of us are called to be the savior or the fixer. And I think one of the things that gets us in the way of even reaching out, texting someone, or starting a conversation with someone that seems to feel like in our hearts we can sense this about each other, that maybe they're struggling, is this sense that we have to come in with a solution and we have to solve all the problems. Greg Hudnall was one of the keynotes, and anyone in Utah knows his name and the work he's done with Hope Squads across the country. And he had us do this little activity where we had to find a stranger in the room and have a 60-second A-B conversation. So, person A spent 60 seconds, person B just listened, and then we reversed that. And he said he's done that experiment across the board, across, many schools, and encountered every time he's done it, someone coming up to him later saying, that's the first time in weeks and months I felt listened to, which is heartbreaking if you consider that. But really, the greatest tool for mental health for all of us is that we feel heard and seen. And that doesn't mean the other person that's listening is a trained professional that's going to solve all the problems and give us this great tool that eliminates all of our issues, but it's the actual speaking and feeling heard that changes all of our mental health. And so I would just say, in answer to your question, make sure you're allowing yourself to be heard. That means we have to sometimes reach out and say, hey, you know what, I could use some support. Do you have a few minutes we can talk? And also, if someone is coming to mind, I've said it on the show many times, text them, say you were listening to Inside Sources, their name came to your mind, how are you doing? That's it. Blame Boyd and I for that little spark that creates the connection. And that alone, especially during the winter months, we get a little isolated because we're cold. We stay inside. We're not out in our yard saying hi to our neighbor. Say something to someone and then spend some time listening.
Yeah, no question. And people blame me for a lot of things every day. So everybody, you always have a blanket excuse. You can, whenever in doubt, blame Boyd. It actually works. We should set up a website.
I blame you for good stuff, Boyd. I blame you for the good stuff.
Before I let you go, Gaynalyn, give us one thing that we all ought to be thinking about today so that we can deepen that ability to see and be deeply seen. As you mentioned, as our good friend David Brooks often points out. What should we do today? Give us one thing that we ought to do a little different today.
Well, listen, I would just say this. I would add another Brooks to that. Arthur Brooks is also super intelligent in ways that I can't even aspire to be. But when we talk about brain health and we talk about connection, I think there is a faith aspect to all of this. And sometimes whatever story we're living today, it feels like this is our forever story. And one of the things I shared on Saturday at the event is this is not the end of anyone's story. Whether you're 90 or 19, today is not forever. And it can feel that way, especially if you deal with chronic mental health stewardships. And so I would just say, please do not make one decision that changes your other choices, and know that today is not forever. And it can feel that way. We can get chronically fatigued when we're dealing with stewardships that are ongoing and marathon feeling, and we're not sprinting through them. We're trying to take little way station stops. So my invitation to the listeners and to myself is find out what those water stops are. I'm not a marathon runner, but I love the analogy to stop and get some water, talk to whoever's helping on the side of the race. We have those helpers, as Fred Rogers says. We just have to look for them. Sometimes we have to ask for that help, and it takes courage and vulnerability, but that ripples out. Yeah. When we do it in our workplaces, in our homes, we give permission to our loved ones and our friends and our coworkers to reach out and ask for help too. So that would be my suggestion.
Nothing more important than if you are in crisis today, if you are struggling, just having a bad day, just remember it's against the laws of nature and nature's God that storms last forever. Storms come, they blow through, and they move on. And if we stick together, if we link arms and move forward together, we can get to those better days on the other side of the storm. If you are in crisis, make sure you dial 988. That is always available 24/7. You can also chat online at 988lifeline.org. As well, along with a host of other resources. Ganel-Lyn Condie, as always, thank you for enlightening and lifting us today, and we look forward to having you back real soon.
Thanks for the conversation, as always, Boyd.
All right, that's Ganel-Lyn Condie, great writer, great speaker, great thinker, someone who understands this in a real personal way and has some practical, tactical tips to help all of us get to a better place. Again, if you're struggling today, 988 is the number, 988lifeline.org. Someone will be there to chat as well. Reach out. And if you know someone who's struggling, you reach out too. We'll be right back.
The BYU Cougars are on a roll.
Spencer finds him for the hammer.
Tuesday at 6, it's BYU Houston. BYU Houston. Pre-game coverage. Tuesday at 6 on Utah's legacy home for the Big 12 and the BYU Cougars. KSL News Radio.
The real test is to go the distance. Can you really sustain excellence over time? Hercules Credit Union has been providing the best of financial services since 1946. It's always about growing stronger together. That's what it's about. That is what they do every day. They show you by their actions that they believe in you, that they think you're special, that they value you as a customer and a member of the community. And right now they're doing that in a powerful way. If you go in and open up a new checking account at Hercules Credit Union, they're going to upgrade you to a premier checking account, no monthly fees. You get all the benefits, identity theft protection, travel benefits, cellular care coverage, and so much more. Just open up that new checking account. You'll be upgraded to a premier checking account for a limited time. Check it out at Hercules Credit Union, locations in Taylorsville, Harriman, Riverton, and Salt Lake City. Or as always, you can find them online, HerculesCU.com.
Jackson Hewitt has a plan to get your tax refund fast with a buck here, buck there. Here a buck, there a buck, everywhere a buck.
You don't have to wait weeks for your tax refund. Get money sooner with a no-fee refund advance loan at Jackson Hewitt.
On this loan, there's a money today guarantee. E-I-E-I-DO.
Don't settle for chicken feed. Get fast bucks at Jackson Hewitt today. No-fee refund advance loans by Republic Bank offered to eligible clients. Money today guarantee if approved for a loan on a prepaid card. Details at jacksonhewitt.com.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
I'm Scott, the owner of Solid Fire Pits. When I began welding my custom-made fire pits for friends and family, I shared them on TikTok because I was just so proud of them. Check it out. That's beautiful. I posted every new fire pit design and more people kept ordering. From 26 states and counting. Then on my birthday, I had my best sales ever. Now how can the universe beat that?
Solid Fire Pits is just one of the 5 million U.S. businesses that rely on TikTok every day. TikTok sparks business.
Valentine's Day is here. This year, give the ultimate gift. Name a star after your sweetheart. This is Rocky Moselle with International Star Registry. For 45 years, we've named millions of stars for celebrities, dignitaries, and individuals worldwide. For $59 and a call to 800-282-3333 or visit starregistry.com, you can give the most memorable gift. The star you name will be recorded in book form in the U.S. Copyright Office. Visit starregistry.com or call 800-282-3333.
IVC, Interventional Vascular and Vein Center, is having a New Year, New Leg special event on Saturday, January 27th. This will be a free screening for varicose veins at their office in Provo. Don't let leg pain slow you down in 2024. Why wait? Now is the time to kick off the new year with new legs. Come and learn why starting at the beginning of the year is ideal to get you ready for spring. IVC has been in business for over 20 years and has been voted the best vein center of Utah Valley for 10 years running. IVC's doctors, advanced practice providers, and sonographers will be on hand to answer your questions. So come see them Saturday, January 27th for a free varicose vein screening. Space is limited, so please RSVP right now. Visit ivein.com. That's the letter I, VEIN.com to schedule your New Year, New Legs free screening at IVC. Because life starts when the pain stops.
Visit the contest page on KSLNewsRadio.com. This week, don't miss your chance at New Year's Cash for being a KSL Text subscriber, or win tickets to Ballet West's Swan Lake, featuring the timeless music of Tchaikovsky. Don't miss Swan Lake February 9th through the 17th. Plus, win tickets to the Utah Boat and Water Sports Expo, February 1st through the 4th at the Mountain America Expo Center. Text the word contest to 57500 or go to KSLNewsRadio.com/contests.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the Utah Senate plans committee hearings this afternoon on a couple of controversial bills that passed the House last week. Second, David Yoakum has passed away. He prosecuted Ted Bundy and other high-profile cases in Utah and defended many others. And third, professors and other staff at the Cal State University system are out on strike this week. Right now, 46 degrees and cloudy in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. If you missed the beginning of the program, we talked about some of the headlines from over the weekend. Of course, Ron DeSantis bowing out before the vote in New Hampshire and what that actually means. We got beyond the headlines in terms of the kind of messaging we expect to hear from Nikki Haley as she tries to now consolidate in a two-person race. In this segment, we're actually going to break down what went wrong in DeSantis land. He entered the race with a lot of hype, although a very flawed rollout on social media platform X. And interestingly, he exited on X as he made his announcement on Sunday afternoon that he was suspending, not ending, suspending his presidential campaign. He does have a few delegates that he garnered in Iowa. He'll take those with him to convention just in case. He needs to play those out a little bit. He did, of course, endorse former President Donald Trump on the way out. But we want to look at what went wrong. Here you had someone who was being touted as the next leader of the Republican Party, someone who had had success as a governor in the state of Florida, and started with an extraordinary amount of campaign cash, a lot of backing, a big super PAC, never backed down. They had incredible amounts of cash, and it appeared that they were the formidable challenger to the former president. And that of all the challengers who entered the race, 12 of them in all, that Ron DeSantis had the inside track to be the alternative. That did not last long. And so we want to break it down. And again, whether you love Ron DeSantis or not, that's not the issue. We're just going to break it down from a strategy standpoint, from what happens in politics across the political spectrum. And really my thesis on all of this, and I've seen it play out so many times, is often those campaigns that start with a large amount of money. Cash flow covers a multitude of sins and problems in a campaign and with a candidate and with a business, by the way. That's where I first learned this principle. I watched so many businesses, and good cash flow covered a multitude of problems in the organization that they didn't have to deal with because they had so much cash coming in the door. But eventually that changes, challenges come up, and then you have to get real. And I think for the DeSantis campaign, they were incapable of getting real. So they spent a lot of cash. They didn't spend it very wisely or well. They didn't leverage anything. And because of that, he really stumbled out of the gate, including his debacle of an announcement on the platform X, where everything went down. No one could hear anything. There was a lot of static, and it was just a really rough entry point, and it never really got better. He had a few moments, I think, where he improved a bit, but never really hit a stride in terms of any kind of momentum. You may remember last month I spoke with David Drucker, senior writer at the Dispatch, friend of the show. We talked about the problems that continued to plague the DeSantis campaign, and it's really interesting. I always love the way David Drucker frames things because it's very direct, very straightforward, not sugar-coated in any way, shape, or form. Here's what he said about the DeSantis campaign even after they got really big endorsements in the crucial state of Iowa.
So they could have focused on those great endorsements, the fact that they had probably the best voter turnout operation in the state where it really matters. But rather than that, they decided to hold a circular firing squad where people from the campaign side and people on the super PAC side decided to squabble with each other, complain about each other.
Very few problems in the campaign. Most of them are personality and ego problems, and the DeSantis campaign was run amok with a lot of jockeying, a lot of positioning between the super PAC and his campaign staff, many of whom were from Tallahassee, very Florida-centric group around the governor. Not surprising, but no real national folks brought in to be part of the strategy, and so they ended up sniping at each other a lot. I mean, unbelievable. As David Drucker pointed out, on the week that he received big endorsements from an evangelical leader who has been a kingmaker in Iowa for a long time, to the governor of Iowa endorsing him, and he still did not win a single county out of the 99 counties in Iowa. A lot of that, I think, was because of what was happening and not happening inside the campaign. David Drucker also talked about the strategy decision that the campaign made to try to pull voters from the former President Trump's base and the difficulty they found in doing that.
I think strategically from the very beginning, the DeSantis campaign, and this is a campaign issue, I think, made a decision to try and go directly at Trump's base, that they would take Trump's base from Trump, and then the rest of the party would come along. And it's very hard to take a committed Trump voter from Trump, as we should have all learned by now.
So an interesting component there, I've shared this a little bit, our friend George Will from the Washington Post, he compared the DeSantis campaign as trying to be New Coke. And you remember when Coca-Cola attempted New Coke, it was one of the biggest marketing disasters in our nation's history. Complete disaster. And this is why. So New Coke didn't taste as good as the old Coke. And the people who liked the old classic Coke, they loved the old classic Coke. They didn't want New Coke, so they rejected it. On the other side, you had those who didn't like Coke at all. They were Pepsi drinkers. And Pepsi drinkers didn't want the old Coke or the new Coke. And I think that is probably the best analogy of what went wrong with the Ron DeSantis campaign. He was trying to be New Coke. So he was trying to be the new Trump. And those who are big supporters of the old Trump like the old Trump. And those who don't want a new version of the former president. And I think that's where Ron DeSantis got stuck trying to please everybody. And whenever you try to please everybody, you please nobody. And you end up on the outside looking in the end. And I think for Ron DeSantis, I think there were a host of missteps and challenges. He did not focus, I think, in terms of the right messaging. He tried to do just a different version of Trump. It was kind of a Trump minus the chaos. And that's not really a message that sells. You got to have something that moves people forward. What's the vision? What comes next? And I think that's where he really missed big. I think the last time we had a candidate begin with such a big advantage in terms of campaign cash, I think you'd have to go back to Jeb Bush, who also had a short-lived, massively flawed and failed presidential run. Had a lot of cash, had a lot of support, had a lot of people lining up to give their endorsement early on. And we saw that with Ron DeSantis as well. A lot of endorsements, including here in the state of Utah, of people who saw that northbound train, wanted to get on the bandwagon while it was early, hoping that would be advantageous to them. And we always remember that ambition rarely takes a chance. Ambition usually gets in things that they think are already decided because that's to their advantage. But the speed bumps happen, airbag deployment on the DeSantis campaign, and now he is on the outside looking in. But that's what happens in the course of campaigns, and that's why we have elections. All right, that wraps it up for hour number one of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to be joined by pollster Scott Rasmussen for one of the most fascinating looks at the elite of America and the difference between what they think and what the rest of us think. Stick around. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. A Utah lawmaker is getting a lot of support for a resolution that says education, work, and marriage all need to come before having children. KSL News Radio's Amy Kobe reports.
Senator Lincoln Fillmore told a committee last week that if a person follows this pattern dubbed the success sequence, they're more likely to avoid a life in poverty. He says it really is the secret to success, and a lot of people agreed. The vice chair of the Board of Education spoke in support, and even Democrat Senator Kathleen Reeby.
The joint resolution still needs to make it through the full Senate as well as the House. The Orem Temple of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was dedicated over the weekend, becoming the 19th operating temple for the church in Utah. Elder D. Todd Christofferson of the Quorum of 12 Apostles led the services, also dedicated a temple in Lima, Peru last week. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Many voters in New Hampshire got a call that sounded like President Biden telling them it was pointless to vote in tomorrow's presidential primary. At today's White House briefing, Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre confirmed the president did not record that message.
That call was indeed fake and not recorded by the president.
Democrats and independent voters have the option of voting in New Hampshire's Republican presidential primary. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day, 138 points at this hour, and the NASDAQ up 49 points as we approach the close of trading. And our KSL weather is cloudy. That's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Derek Overstreet, founder of the New Millennium Group. We're a financial planning firm. Listen, we're fiduciaries. We have advisors standing by right now to take your call. That's 888-999-6370. 888-999-6370. The reason you're going to want to call is we're going to help you retire 3 to 5 years before you thought possible. Now, imagine how that would be if you could actually retire 3 to 5 years sooner than your plan was. The way we do this is by putting together a step-by-step plan, taking into consideration any rental properties that you have, any pension income that you have, your Social Security. Listen, we put that all together for you in writing. It will allow us to build your income based on inflation. You know, inflation has been rapidly rising. You and I both need a plan that whatever we start out our income at, in 5 or 10 years, we're going to need 40% more income. So if you're one of those people listening and you'd like a plan in writing, give us a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370, or go to utahsfinancialplanner.com.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
All of the Valley freeways are looking at a nice drive in progress right now. No accidents, no delays. We did have a report of a crash in Summit County, northbound on SR 224 at New Park Boulevard, blocking the left lanes. That is prior to the I-80 junction at Kimball Junction, but overall, kind of quiet on the commute at this time. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, cloudy with mild temperatures, a chance of showers Tuesday and Thursday. Today's high 48, 45 tomorrow, 42 on Wednesday, and our lows will stay mainly above freezing. 46 degrees and cloudy right now. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson
On Utah's home for elevated conversation.
Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, when we talk about the headline of America's founding ideals of freedom, economic freedom, being able to have self-governance, those are all richly American ideas. Would you believe that there's a group of Americans who believe we have too much freedom? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, it is one of those think again moments as we look at some of the opinions and the pulse of what's going on in the country as, of course, we enter this big 2024 election year. We often talk about the term elite. We want to get into what that really can mean and how things differ in terms of those core American values and beliefs about the things that we deal with and interact with every day. Really thrilled to have back on the program with us today Scott Rasmussen, best of the best when it comes to polling and analysis, counter-polling in particular in our nation. And Scott, welcome back to the show.
Boyd, it's always great to be with you. A lot of people think we should be talking about the New Hampshire primary, but there's a lot of other interesting things going on in the country these days.
That's right. I think this is far more interesting than what's going on in New Hampshire. In a very cold New Hampshire day today, although that will impact some of this. I want to get to something that you rolled out about a week ago, a deep dive polling around the elite. I want you to define that in terms of what you looked at in terms of the elite in America, and then how their view of the country is different from the rest of the country.
Well, Boyd, this began, I just look at lots and lots of survey data. We at RMG Research do 2 national surveys every week, and we look at that data and other data that comes in, and consistently we noted that there were 3 groups that were out of sync with most Americans. One group were those with a postgraduate degree. A lot of talk in the country these days about the diploma divide, those with or without a college degree. But actually the biggest gap is between those with a postgraduate degree and the rest of the country. People who lived in a very densely populated urban area, more than 10,000 people per square mile, places like Manhattan, parts of D.C. People who lived in those areas also had views that were outside the norm, and then people who made more than $150,000 a year. I had this hunch that maybe if we combine them, we might learn something, and it was the thought was if you have a postgraduate degree and you go to live in Manhattan or go to live in D.C., you might have different interests than if you go to live somewhere else in the country. And what we found was absolutely stunning. As a starting point, the people who are in this elite 1%, who have all 3 of those attributes, their job approval rating for President Biden is over 80%. When we first tested this, the average among all voters for Biden was 41%, and among the elites, it was 82%. Pretty big gap. We then teamed up with the Committee to Unleash Prosperity and did 2 surveys of 1,000 members of this elite 1%. And you mentioned freedom in the introduction. Well, 57% of American voters say we don't have enough individual freedom in the country. Only 16% say that we have too much. However, among the elite 1%, things are a lot different. 47% of this group, 47% of the elite, say there's too much individual freedom in America. And among a subset, the group of that elites who talk politics every day, those who live and breathe politics and work in politics, 69% of them say there's too much individual freedom. This is shocking numbers when 69% of elites are saying there's too much freedom and 57% of voters say not enough. Something is off.
Yeah, clearly, there's something a little sideways in that, and it is interesting too. The elite 1% clearly have an outsized voice, whether that's in media, whether that's in politics, whether that's in business, on corporate boards and communities. They do have a really outsized voice. And one of the other numbers that really jumped out to me, Scott, that I'd like you to unpack for us a little bit, and that is just this trust in government. As a whole, it's been going down, but amongst the elite, it seems to be going up.
Well, the Pew Research Center has been asking a question for a very long time about how often do you trust the federal government to do the right thing? And for the last 50 years or so, most Americans have said they don't trust the government most of the time. So there's just this sort of deeply embedded skepticism and distrust of the federal government. And right now in the Pew Research, that number is something like 15 or 20% of voters say they trust the government most of the time. But among the elite 1%, 70%, 70%, trust the federal government to do the right thing most of the time. And, when I first saw that, Boyd, I was just stunned. I couldn't figure out what's going on. Everybody I know is skeptical. But if you stop and think about it, the government, the people who are in leadership positions in the executive branch or in agencies, people in Congress and staffers and on K Street, they're part of the elite 1%. And if you're in that world and you want to get in touch with somebody, maybe you know a classmate of theirs, or maybe you went to school with them, and it's a different world. And if you think about, this idea they have so much trust, that also helps explain why they may think there's too much individual freedom in America. They trust the government to make right decisions more than they trust the voters.
Yeah, and that leads to so many interesting things, even when it comes to a policy standpoint. You talked about some of the issues around climate change and what should or shouldn't be done. Another area where there were some pretty stark differences in terms of how people think we ought to approach that.
Yeah, 77% of these elites, 77% of the elite 1%, would like to impose strict rations and restrictions on the private use of gas, meat, and electricity. 63% of voters say no way. Now, part of that can be explained by the fact that, well, if you live in these densely populated urban areas, you don't have a car, so maybe you don't mind, sacrificing gas-driven vehicles and things. Most of the rest of the country would disagree with you. But another part of it, I suspect, has to do with something we saw a lot of during the pandemic. The elite don't have a problem with passing one set of rules and then not obeying them. I have no doubt that if there were restrictions imposed, some of these elites would find ways to get around them. But boy, the divide is deep and on a whole range of issues. Voters say we need more good jobs for people without a college degree, and the elite are saying, no, it's really more important that we get everybody into college. Different perspectives. And you made a comment in the opening about, can you believe there were some people in this country, who oppose those founding ideals? That's always been the case from the very beginning of our nation. Alexander Hamilton gave a speech at the Constitutional Convention, talked 6 hours. Right after winning this victory, he wanted to establish a monarchy, just like Britain, just like the nation we won our independence from. The southern states seceded because they disagreed with some of those founding ideals. So there's always been a little bit of an undercurrent of people who think, some of us are destined to rule over others. The others will appreciate it, and we just have to, Woodrow Wilson said the problem is the American people have never gotten over the Declaration of Independence. And what we're seeing now is in this elite group who have tremendous influence, that opinion is rising once again.
Fascinating stuff. We're going to stay with the conversation. Really, as Scott alluded to, that the debate's been going on for 2,500 years. Are the masses the biggest threat to democracy? And what is democracy without them, by the way? We'll dig into that a little bit. And we're also going to expand into an area that was the most stunning polling number I've ever seen, one that Scott reported out on. So we're going to stay with the conversation with Scott Rasmussen, looking at the divide between postgraduate elite and the rest of America on a wide range of issues and what it actually means for the rest of us. Coming up next. Stick around.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Every single show on KSL News Radio is part of the KSL app, so you can listen when you want. News with Tim and Amanda when you get up? Hit live on the app. Dave and Dejanovic at 9 and Boyd Matheson at 1? They're on the app. Plus, you can podcast them for work. And Jeff Kaplan? Yeah, he's there on the app. The movie show, KSL Greenhouse, latest traffic report? They're all on the app for KSL News Radio. KSL News Radio.
The monster is coming, and it wants you and your family.
And that's great news, really, because it's time for the Bear Lake Monster Winterfest, January 26th through the 28th. Winterfest is all about an incredible celebration of winter and all the fun it brings. So start Friday with Monster Winter Sports and Trails Day, a free event featuring fat tire bikes, snowshoes, snowmobiles, and tubes for the kids. Also a taste of Bear Lake, with local restaurants dishing up their tasty specialties. Then Saturday, it's the Monster 5K Walk and Run, a Monster Cisco Disco Tournament, chili cook-off, even a cardboard boat regatta, followed by the famous Monster Plunge. Come on, Bear Lake awaits. Visit BearLakeMonsterWinterfest.com for pre-registration times and locations. That's BearLakeMonsterWinterfest.com. Presented by Bear Lake Visitors Bureau and Bear Lake Chamber.
Denise has been playing jazz for 40 years. Last concert, one of the musicians fell sick with RSV. Respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV, is a highly contagious virus that can lead to breathing problems. This time, she's choosing to help protect herself with Pfizer's RSV vaccine, Abrysvo. Abrysvo is a vaccine for the prevention of lower respiratory tract disease caused by respiratory syncytial virus, RSV, in adults 60 years of age and older. Abrysvo is not for everyone and may not protect all who receive the vaccine. Don't get Abrysvo if you've had a severe allergic reaction to its ingredients. People with a weakened immune system may have a decreased response to Abrysvo. The most common side effects are tiredness, headache, pain at the injection site, and muscle pain. Ask your pharmacist or doctor about Pfizer's RSV vaccine, Abrysvo, respiratory syncytial virus vaccine. For full prescribing information, please call 1-844-989-7284 or visit abrysvo.com. Brought to you by Pfizer.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
A stranger with a gun came upon 2 teens taking pictures under a rising full moon. But violence is only the beginning of this story.
Sometimes I thought, there are no miracles. Yeah, there are, and this is a big one.
I'm Amy Donaldson, and I've spent my career talking about how lives are undone by violence. The Letter is a podcast about how lives are remade. Follow The Letter at theletterpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, some Utah legislators are promoting what they call the success sequence for young adults: education, work, and marriage before kids. Second, the new temple of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was dedicated in Orem over the weekend. And third, many voters in New Hampshire got a robocall this week that sounded like President Biden, but it was a fake. 46 degrees and cloudy right now in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. We're staying with the question and the conversation with our friend Scott Rasmussen, best of the best when it comes to having a real finger on the pulse of what's going on in the country. And Scott, as we continue on with this group of elite, and again, elite in terms of postgraduate education, income, and where they live, that population density, you referenced Woodrow Wilson before we went to the break, and one of the things that he talked about as he went through all of his expansion of government was that we would have these civil servants who'd been prepared with special schooling so that they would be smarter and be able to do everything regardless of how the voters tried to muck it up.
Well, this Wilson wrote in 1887 in the Study of Administration about his dream was that we needed a bunch of administrators to run the government, people who were insulated from the voters. And as a very important part of that, he did think that there should be special schools set up. And not quite the way he envisioned it, but we've reached that point. Half of the people who are politically influential elites, and half of the people in the corporate elite world and in the philanthropic world went to one of 12 elite colleges. And, you all know the names, places like Harvard and Yale and Stanford. So we have these schools that are dominating the elite 1%. And their views, are pretty sharply out of touch with the rest of America. And when you begin to take a look at the makeup of who's going to those schools and the professors, it doesn't look at all like America. So Wilson got his dream on that. And I think he'd chuckle if he were here today, because he also talked about the role of these elites is to make people care, pay attention to the issues the elites thought were important, and then to make them pay attention to the right things. In other words, we don't need any misinformation coming from other sources, is maybe a modern translation of that.
Because we know best. So if you'll just listen to us.
We are the smartest. We've been trained for this. And it's really frustrating. There is that trust in government, that belief that they really do know what's best, leads to a disturbing mindset that the problem, therefore, happens to be the voters. If we just get them out of the way, it's kind of like a business that says it'd be a great business except for the customers. Well, I think some of the elite love democracy except for the voters.
Yeah, no question. I want to get to this number that was just mind-boggling to me. We've talked a lot about free and fair elections for a long time in this country, and of course, it's been in very sharp focus for the last few years. You found some very interesting gaps in terms of cheating in elections. Break that down for us.
Sometimes you just ask a polling question because you're just curious to get some underlying attitudes, not sure what's going to come of it. So I posed a scenario where your favorite candidate lost an election, but their team knew they could cheat and get away with it. So we asked voters, would you rather cheat than lose a close election? And 7% of voters said, yeah, we'd rather cheat. Now, that's not a great number. I wish it was 1%. But still, the vast majority of Americans would rather play fair. When we got to the elite 1%, 35% of them, 1 out of 3, would rather cheat than lose a close election. But the number, and you and I have talked about it. I've been polling since the 80s. This may be the most terrifying polling stat I've ever come across. The politically obsessed elite 1%, the people who are in this elite world, who talk politics every day and who are involved in the political process, 69% of them would rather cheat than respect the people that respect the voters. This describes a win-at-all-cost mindset that the process doesn't matter, the voters don't matter, we know what's right, and if we have to cheat to win, well, by golly, that's what we're going to do. 69% of the politically obsessed elite would rather cheat than lose a close election. Utterly mind-boggling.
That is a mind-boggling result on that one. I kept looking at that one over and over again. Really, 69% would say it's okay to cheat as long to get to the right result. But break this down for us a little bit, Scott, in terms of kind of the practical, tactical explanation, in terms of kind of where we've been, the rise of populism, not just here in the United States, but around the world. And is it that the average person suddenly feels that even if they do things all right, the political elite or the elite in general are going to get what they want in the end anyway, and so what's the use?
Yeah, and I think that explains a lot of what's going on. And you have to remember there's this huge gap. On the one hand, you do have the elite who trust the government, who trust the experts, who want to impose regulations because they think they're necessary for whatever purpose. And when they leave their bubble and go and talk to, they go home for the holidays or something and run into people who aren't in their bubble, they're shocked by the skepticism. In one of the presentations I made, I put up a slide of Darth Vader saying, "I find your lack of faith disturbing." And I think emotionally that's the way it feels to the elites when the rest of us begin to push back a little bit. They can't understand why we're not thanking them. On the flip side of that, most voters who don't have that faith in government, who don't have the ability to call and find whoever they need to at whatever agency they want, they're just trying to figure out who are these people and what gives them the right to impose these rules on the rest of us. Boyd, I do want to finish. We can talk all day about how bad some of these numbers are. But I want to finish on a little bit of a good note.
Always.
The elite 1%, like any other demographic that we talk about, are not a homogenous group. They certainly have tendencies that are un-American, but there's a segment that I call elite but not elitist. About a third of the people in this group, this elite 1%, did not go to one of those elite schools. They do not talk politics every day. And they have views that are pretty much like everyday Americans. They tend to think there's not enough individual freedom in America. They recognize that voters don't support things like strict rationing. They don't want to cheat. And the fact that this group is there is very encouraging, very important. And I think one of the things that has to happen is that we need to get some of these people, some of these elites, a little more engaged in the political process to push back against some of the radicalism that we're seeing. At the same time, there's something else that's good news, which is 89% of voters still believe that America's founding ideals of freedom, equality, and self-governance are worth fighting for. The reality is these elites, this elite 1%, has tremendous institutional power in government and in business and in media, but they have no connection with the American people. It's a fragile hold on power, and voters need to keep looking for ways to make sure that we remain a government of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Great perspective as always, Scott Rasmussen. This is an extraordinary look, and we look forward to your continued study of this elite 1%, where those gaps are, but most importantly, what it means to the American people and the future of our constitutional republic. Scott, thanks so much for making time for us on a busy day, and we look forward to having you back real soon.
Thanks, Boyd.
So as we look back at this conversation with Scott Rasmussen, it is so fascinating to me that the numbers are just so wildly different. The beliefs of those that are in this elite 1% versus the rest of the country on everything from should we ration meat to help with climate change? Should we let the government control your thermostat in terms of air conditioning? With that elite 1%, those numbers are like, yes, of course, government should be able to control all of that. And for the rest of America, no one's even considering that as an option. looking at how much you're willing to invest on certain things. Very, very different as we look across the spectrum. And the thing that I want to close out with as we look at this, I want to reemphasize, Scott said that there are those elites that are not elitist. Those are different things. And so just because you went to a certain school or you had a certain level of postgraduate degree or a certain income, it's the views. It's not a homogenous group, to be sure, but this group in particular, the elite 1% that do talk politics every day, their views of the role of government in your life, the amount of freedom that you should have and be able to exercise, the power of agencies to make decisions regardless of the will of the American people, and the most stunning one of all, if it's okay to cheat to win an election just because you think that will be better. And that is a real stunning set of numbers as well. If you missed any of this, go back to the podcast. It'll be up later on this afternoon. And we'll continue to break all of that down. But the most important thing is that the vast majority of America, if they would realize that they are the vast majority of America, that they are the majority, that these others might have really outsized voices and outsized influence, but it doesn't mean that they are the heart and soul of the country or the future of the constitutional republic. All right, we'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top local story this hour. A Utah political analyst says the departure of Ron DeSantis from the 2024 presidential race means Republicans who saw him as a more stable and predictable alternative to former President Donald Trump now don't have that option.
Would implement Donald Trump's policies, but would not open his mouth in such a dangerous way.
That's KSL at Night host Taylor Morgan, and he says many Republicans appear to have forgotten why they liked DeSantis in the first place. DeSantis, after dropping out of the race, has endorsed Donald Trump. Former Salt Lake County District Attorney David Yoakum has passed away. Yoakum was first elected in 1986, served 4 total terms. He was known as the first prosecutor to convict Ted Bundy in 1976 for aggravated kidnapping and also prosecuted notorious criminals like Mark Hoffman. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The U.S. Supreme Court siding with the Biden administration in a fight with the state of Texas and its governor over razor wire along the U.S. border with Mexico. ABC's Alex Stone explains.
The ruling is a blow to Texas and Governor Greg Abbott's fight for the state to enforce border policies, something the Department of Homeland Security has argued has been violating federal supremacy by the state enforcing border policy. In a 5-4 ruling, the Supreme Court allowing federal border agents to cut and remove Texas's border razor wire. The court did not explain the reasoning for its ruling.
And your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day, finishing trading 138 points. The NASDAQ was up 49, the S&P 500 up 10. Our KSL weather, just clouds and few showers on the way. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:32.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
This is Congressman John Curtis. I'm sure you've heard that I'm running for the U.S. Senate, and I'd like to invite you to my campaign kickoff this Monday, January 22nd at 6 p.m. in Orem. You can find the address at johncurtis.org. Join me to celebrate our early momentum across the state. We're strong and we're optimistic. I hope you'll come say hi on Monday evening, share the excitement, and be part of this journey. We'll have J-Dogs, Twisted Sugar Cookies, and great company. Please RSVP at johncurtis.org to let me know you're coming. This Monday, January 22nd at 6 p.m. in Orem. You can find the address at johncurtis.org. I look forward to serving you in the U.S. Senate. As your senator, I'll keep getting things done for Utah. Please RSVP at johncurtis.org to let me know you're coming. See you Monday.
Paid for by John Curtis for Utah.
In order for small businesses to thrive, they need to be smart, efficient, savvy, staying ahead of the market at every turn, finding ways to do more with less. and taking advantage of every opportunity that comes their way. That's why Comcast Business is introducing the Small Business Bonus. For a limited time, you can get up to a $1,000 prepaid card when you switch to Comcast Business, the company with the largest, fastest, reliable network. So if you're a small business owner, don't wait. Call or go online to learn about the $1,000 bonus today.
Give your business a head start in 2024. Get started with fast speeds and advanced security for $49.99 a month for 12 months with a 2-year agreement. Call or go online to switch today. Ends 2/21/24. Restrictions apply. New customers only with 50 megabits per second internet and security edge. EcoBill and autopay required. Equipment, taxes, and fees extra. Prepaid card offer requires premium internet.
Traffic and weather together are brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meeks.
We are looking at a good drive on all the Valley freeways and our main secondaries. Now, road work has caused a little bit of backup northbound 5600 west approaching 4100 south. Salt Lake Magazine calls Swan Lake breathtaking, featuring the timeless music of Tchaikovsky, performed live with the Ballet West Orchestra, February 9th through the 17th. Buy tickets at balletwest.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, cloudy with mild temperatures and a chance of showers Tuesday and Thursday. Today's high 48, 45 tomorrow. Our lows will stay above freezing. And right now we're at 46 degrees. It's mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
The Biden administration is preparing to introduce new EPA regulation that's already receiving backlash from heads of industry. Always interesting when the politics and the policy come crashing together. We want to dissect it just a little bit and see what's underneath all of those headlines today. Helping us do that, Maxine Joselo is a staff writer, anchors the Climate 202 at the Washington Post. And Maxine, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So give us kind of a lay of the land. The Environmental Protection Agency is going to lay out a significant piece of policy and regulation, but it's already getting a lot of backlash, including potential impact on the 2024 re-election bid for the president. Tell us about it.
Yes, that's correct. So according to the sources I spoke with for my story, the EPA is gearing up to release this final regulation by the end of the month that would significantly strengthen limits on pollution of fine particle matter, including soot, from industrial facilities across the country. And major companies and trade associations are warning before this even rule is out that it could really harm manufacturing jobs, including in key swing states that are really key for President Biden's reelection effort.
And so as you look at that, and I love the way you broke this down in your piece at the Washington Post today, so you have a new EPA rule that should save lives, somewhere north of 4,000 lives a year. And then you have the political class, some of the business class, manufacturing, some of the associations, the K Street lobbyists are saying, wait, not so fast. This could be really bad for the re-election process. Did we lose Maxine?
Oh, I'm so sorry you dropped out.
There we go. Oh, sorry. So help us unpack it a little bit in terms of the impact. You broke this down in your piece at the Washington Post in terms of both the positive impact in terms of the difference it would make, but then also why some of those in the elite class are saying this could be really bad politically.
Sure, and apologies for dropping out there for a second.
No worries.
So the public health benefits of this rule could be quite significant. The EPA has estimated that if finalized, an annual soot standard of 9 micrograms per cubic meter, which is what the rule is expected to say, would prevent up to 4,200 premature deaths and 270,000 lost workdays per year. And industry groups don't dispute those enormous public health benefits. What they do dispute is the cost that this rule could have on manufacturing jobs. And they say that this rule could cause many counties in manufacturing areas to be out of compliance or close to being out of compliance with the new limit on soot pollution. And as a result, they think that plants would have a harder time getting permits for new or modified manufacturing facilities, and that this could undermine President Biden's pitch that he's made on the campaign trail that he's really revitalizing these manufacturing towns in a way that Donald Trump, the GOP frontrunner for the presidential nomination, really hasn't.
Yeah, and so as you look at this, Maxine, as you talk to your sources, this is such an interesting clash between two sets of groups that have been very positive for the president in terms of his efforts around climate and the environment, and then as well as manufacturing jobs that you mentioned. Give us some of the dynamics in terms of what does the lobbying effort look like on both sides? Obviously, the EPA can do what they want by rule, but give us some of the dynamics in terms of these relationships.
Yeah, well, so definitely fair to say that there's intense lobbying on the part of the business community against this rule before it's even been released. So it's almost kind of preemptive lobbying. And I think it's also safe to say that there might be litigation once this rule is released with industry groups that aren't satisfied with this rule for all the reasons I just articulated, challenging it in court. So that's kind of the political and legal opposition that's at play here.
And that's always my favorite. The preemptive lobbying is always the finest kind of lobbying in our nation's capital, where they're trying to get out ahead of things, trying to point the president of, oh, this will not be good for you, and doing that kind of lobbying effort. You also mentioned the legal side of this, and this is one of the weaknesses of doing things, either by an executive order or through an administrative rule. Is the White House or is the administration, the agency, are they slowing down at all in the face of this opposition, or do they just feel like, hey, we think this is the right thing, so we're just going to march this forward towards the end of the month?
I get the sense that the EPA and really every agency in the Biden administration is taking really special care to ensure that the regulations they put out are durable and can survive what are almost certain to be waves of lawsuits over those rules. That doesn't mean necessarily that they're slowing down, but maybe that it takes a little bit more time to, cross their I's and dot their T's and make sure that these rules will be durable and survive in court. Whether they survive after the election is another matter. If a Republican wins, then they would likely undo many of the rules that EPA put out under Biden.
Yeah, and that's the last question I wanted to get to, Maxine, from your perspective. Obviously, getting things done in Congress has become the ultimate test these days, or the ultimate futile test in actually getting it done. But we always say things that get done by executive order or agency rule get undone by executive order and agency rule. And that creates a lot of uncertainty that rarely leads to good results or good policy. Is there any appetite at all? Is there any effort going on in terms of having a congressional fix to this that actually could survive a change in administration?
Not that I'm aware of, although I'll keep my ear to the ground when I'm on Capitol Hill for any rumblings about legislation to address this issue. Obviously, if the Biden administration doesn't finalize its regulations by around May or early June, then they could be subject to the Congressional Review Act, which would allow a new Republican Congress and president to overturn those rules with a simple majority vote. So I think you'll see agencies, not just EPA, but across Washington, picking up the pace and trying to finalize their rules by May at the earliest so that they're not subject to the Congressional Review Act. But as far as Congress acting on this issue, I think they have their hands full with trying to fund the government and some of the other things that they seem to be struggling to do at the moment.
That's right. They're not doing those very well either. We wish they would pick something that they would actually do and do well. Great perspective, great piece of the Washington Post today. Maxine Joselo is a staff writer, anchor of the Climate 202 for the Washington Post. And Maxine, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Again, that's Maxine Jossolo from the Washington Post. And this is another really interesting example of where policy and politics clash, where here you have groups that are usually on the president's team in terms of his own agency, the EPA, and then those in the manufacturing sector in particular, business sector, that are saying, hey, wait a minute, this may not be the best thing for jobs. This may cost a lot of manufacturing jobs in really critical swing states that President Biden needs to win if he wants to win another 4 years in the White House. And so you have this clash going on. I love the way Maxine framed it, that there's some preemptive lobbying going on, that these groups and associations have already been saying, hey, this is awful, this is not good, it's going to hurt you in swing states, it's going to hurt you in the Midwest, it's going to hurt manufacturing jobs, those are an important part of your base. And so all of that creates this really interesting dynamic that the president's going to have to navigate. And then beyond that, let's get to the real portion of the program that we rarely get to in the politics of today. And that is that this rule could be very good at saving some lives. If the estimates about 4,200 lives a year would be saved by this particular rule in terms of some of these particles that are being emitted out into the air. And so that's a good thing. We should have a conversation around that. But if we can only have the conversation in the context of the politics of it all, that's not a good conversation. And if the only way to implement that regulation is to do it either by executive order, the president just doing it with a pen, or the agency just doing it by rule, that often creates more uncertainty in the process. Because what gets done by rule and by the stroke of a pen gets undone by rule and the stroke of a pen when Democrats and Republicans swap who's in power in the White House. And that's not good for the environment, and it's not good for the American people. It just creates more uncertainty, which never produces good results. All right, we'll step aside for one last break. When we come back, some final thoughts on Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's easy to think all money managers are pretty much the same, but at Fisher Investments, we're clearly different.
Different? How? You sell high-commission investment products, right?
No, Fisher Investments doesn't sell any commission-based investment products.
Well, you must earn commissions on trades.
Nope, never at Fisher. We're a fiduciary, obligated to act in our client's best interest. It's the highest standard of care for a financial advisor.
How do you know what's in their best interest?
We get to know our clients and then tailor a portfolio based on their goals and needs.
But you probably sneak in some hidden and layered fees.
No, we have one transparent management fee structured so we do better when our clients do better.
Wow, you really do look out for your clients.
That's because our top priority is helping them achieve a comfortable retirement. It might be why most of our clients come from other money managers. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you switch to us. Fisher Investments. Clearly different money management.
Investments and securities involve the risk of loss.
My doctor told me my blood pressure is borderline. I figured I could worry about it or do something about it. So I took control with Garlic Healthy Blood Pressure Formula. It works safely and naturally to help maintain healthy blood pressure with a custom blend of garlic, vitamins, and minerals. And it's odor-free. I'm taking charge with Garlic Healthy Blood Pressure Formula.
These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. The term natural references only the garlic in the product. Use as directed.
I'm Scott, the owner of Solid Fire Pits. When I began welding my custom-made fire pits for friends and family, I shared them on TikTok because I was just so proud of them. Check it out. That's beautiful. I posted every new fire pit design, and more people kept ordering, from 26 states and counting. Then on my birthday, I had my best sales ever. Now, how can the universe beat that?
Solid Fire Pits is just one of the 5 million U.S. businesses that rely on TikTok every day. TikTok sparks business.
If you've ever set New Year's resolutions before, you know how difficult it is to follow through because you have to wait to see the results. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and in honor of your New Year, New You resolutions, Any Hour Services is having our New Year, New System sale. From now until the end of February, Any Hour Services will give you $2,024 off a new furnace and air conditioner. And you don't have to wait to save the money. You get $2,024 off at the time of purchase. The only thing you have to do to qualify for our New Year, New System sale is call Any Hour Services and schedule a free estimate. When you call, there's no obligation to buy. Just schedule a time to meet that works best for you. Let me say that again. From now until the end of February, when you have Any Hour Services install a new furnace and air conditioner, we'll give you $2,024 off. Call Any Hour Services right now and schedule a free estimate. 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Jeff Kaplan's Minute of News. We're committed to letting you know exactly what's going on. On our show, we're going to bring you up to speed on what's happening in the world to this moment. At the same time, the news can be really burdensome. It can leave you feeling a little bit depressed and even a little bit more depressed. My Minute of News is just a moment to lift you up. I'm blessed that KSL has given me the freedom to talk about whatever I want. Literally, it is my minute of news. Sometimes it's pegged to what's happening that very day. Sometimes it might be something bizarre that you didn't know happening somewhere else in the world. To make you smile for a moment, even on a difficult day, and make you realize the world is still spinning. I am so honored that so many people have appreciated and enjoy the Minute of News every afternoon.
Ride Home with Jeff Kaplan, weekdays 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel you attract people who tend to be compulsive or abusive?
Do you have money problems because of someone else's drinking?
Are you afraid or embarrassed to bring your friends home?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
More than half of all adults have a family history of alcoholism.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
Social Security is with you through life's journey from birth to retirement. As your life changes year to year, so do your needs. For over 80 years, Social Security has helped to meet your needs and is committed to improving access to the services that make a difference in your life. Today, you can verify your earnings, estimate your future benefits, apply for retirement, manage your benefits, and even change your address, all from the comfort of your home. Social Security's online services help put you in control with secure access to your information anytime, anywhere, allowing you to spend more time with family, friends, or simply just enjoying the day. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. See what you can do online at socialsecurity.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bonas. First, a political analyst on KSL at Night says the departure of Ron DeSantis from the presidential campaign means many voters feel they don't have a more stable alternative to Donald Trump. Second, David Yoakum, who served 4 terms as Salt Lake County's district attorney, has passed away. And third, the Supreme Court says it's okay for federal agents to remove razor wire placed along the border with Mexico by the state of Texas. Right now, 46 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as it always is. I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program today, kind of want to bring things full circle just a little bit. We started the show today, of course, talking about the big headlines from over the weekend as the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, suspended his campaign for the presidency, for the nomination on the Republican side. Of course, that has big implications for the Nikki Haley campaign. It will impact, of course, former President Trump in his efforts to reclaim the nomination and return to the White House. And it has a big impact in terms of President Joe Biden, what he's doing, what he will attempt to do in the weeks ahead. And so as you look at all of that, the thing that keeps coming back to me is this lack of leadership. There's really this void in it. And with Ron DeSantis, I think we saw it in some very interesting ways. He had a lot of hype coming in. He tried to be a different version of the former president. He had massive amounts of campaign cash and really has 8 delegates out of Iowa to show for it. And that's it. And so when you look at that whole process, it's always an interesting thing to me. And to me, it's one of the things that we need to look at when we're thinking about who we're going to vote for in these campaigns. I would caution everyone that one of the problems and the things that does us a great disservice in elections, not just presidential, by the way, same thing applies whether it's a governor's race, whether it's a legislative race, a local legislative, a federal legislative race, a mayor's race, a city council race, a school board race, is we love this rush to the finish and make it inevitable. And part of what campaign consultants do is try to create that feeling of the inevitable, because that's how you wear down your opponent. More importantly, it's how you wear down your opponent's supporters. And that's how you wear down your opponent's funders or contributors, those who are donating to the campaign. Because everybody wants to be part of a winning story. And so often that's where campaign cash starts to dry up, is when suddenly people say, oh, there's no chance. It's inevitable. It's a runaway train. It's cast in stone. And so that's what they want you to believe. And whether it is or not is often a self-fulfilling prophecy, not necessarily based on reality. It's who tells the story. It's who makes the spin work. I continue to chuckle as everyone says, oh, it's all over. It's all done. One of my favorite moments of creating momentum was by candidate Bill Clinton, who got off to a rocky start, had some scandals going on in his personal life, got to New Hampshire, and finished second place in New Hampshire. And that night in New Hampshire, Bill Clinton said that New Hampshire has made Bill Clinton the comeback kid. He didn't even win. He didn't even win New Hampshire. And he was declared, and it was on the headlines of all the major news publications, the comeback kid. And suddenly the narrative changed. And the story got retold and retold. And money poured into the campaign coffers. And he began to build his coalition that ultimately took him to the White House and 2 terms in that office. And so for everyone who's saying that it's over, it's done, it's through, I just say not so fast. And not so fast, not just because we don't have to have this done, with only a few delegates having been handed out thus far, but it's not good for the process. And some people say, oh, we have to galvanize, we have to solidify and unify around one person, we have to do it right now. Do we? I don't think there's anything anywhere that says that has to be done. In fact, currently we've had one state weigh in. So are we saying that the other 49 states have no voice or don't matter in choosing who should be the nominee for the Republicans or the Democrats? Doesn't matter. Are we just saying that we're going to go to Iowa and then New Hampshire and then it's over because those 2 states have had their voice heard? I don't think that's the way it's supposed to be. Now, the Democratic Party loves that. The Republican Party loves that. You know why? Because they can keep pooling all of their resources for the general election. They don't want to spend money on primaries. They don't want to spend money on all of these primaries that go on all the way to June. They want this to be done so they can consolidate donors and resources for the general election. I don't think that's necessarily the best thing for our constitutional republic. I think we should have more debates. I think we should have better conversations. I think we should drag this thing out to June. I always maintain the thing that helped Barack Obama the most was that it took him until June to get enough delegates to be the Democratic nominee against Hillary Clinton. It made him a better candidate in the fall. I think it made him a better president because he had to be out there amongst the people telling a message that wasn't just who he was against, but what he was for. That's good for the process. That's good for the people. And when we, the people, say, oh, well, it's all over because the talking heads on cable news told me it was over, or everywhere I looked on the internet today told me it was over, so it's over, so I shouldn't donate to a campaign. I shouldn't show up and vote on Election Day. I shouldn't even worry about it. Well, I'm telling you, those in power, that's a good day for them. I don't know that it's a good day for the Republic. And so let's not be quite so quick to rush in. Can you say it's inevitable? It's a slam dunk. It's a done deal.